Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Welcome back, Catholic pilgrims. I hope that your day is starting off well. It's a little weird here with the time change. I usually record this in the early evening time, and it gets dropped right when you all are waking up. So just as I'm getting ready for dinner, if you're listening to this in the morning, there's a wide time change there. I am 8 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time and I think 11 hours ahead of Pacific Standard Time. So that makes things tricky. So today we are going to be reading, again, Notebook 1. We're starting at number 21, and we'll be reading to the end of the first paragraph of 23. So here we go. End of postulancy, April 29th, 1926. My superiors, probably Mother Leonard and Mother Jane, sent me to the novitiate in Krakow. An inconceivable joy reigned in my soul. When we arrived at the novitiate, Sister Henry was dying. A few days later, she came to me, in spirit after her death, and bid me to go to the Mother Directress of Novices, Sister Margaret, and tell her to ask her confessor, Father Respond, to offer 1 Mass for her and 3 ejaculatory prayers. At first, I agreed, but the next day, I decided I would not go to Mother Directress because I was not sure whether this had happened in a dream or in reality, and so I did not go. The following night, the same thing was repeated more clearly. I had no more doubt. Still, in the morning, I decided not to tell the directress about it unless I saw her, Sister Henry, during the day. At once, I ran into her in the corridor. She reproached me for not having gone immediately, and a great uneasiness filled my soul. So I went immediately to Mother Directress, and I told her everything that had happened to me. Mother responded that she would take care of the matter. At once, peace reigned in my soul, and on the 3rd day this sister came to me and said, "May God repay you." The day I took the religious habit, God let me understand how much I was to suffer. I clearly saw to what I was committing myself. I experienced a moment of that suffering, but then God filled my soul again with great consolations. Toward the end of the first year of my novitiate, darkness began to cast its shadow over my soul. I felt no consolation in prayer. I had to make a great effort to meditate. Fear began to sweep over me. Going deeper into myself, I could find nothing but great misery. I could also clearly see the great holiness of God. I did not dare to raise my eyes to him, but reduced myself to dust under his feet and begged for mercy. My soul was in this state for almost 6 months. Our beloved Mother Directress, Mary Joseph, encouraged me in these difficult moments, but the suffering continued to grow stronger. Okay, so there's a couple of things I wanted to, that at least stood out to me. So the first one is, she's visited by this sister that has passed away, Sister Henry. And Sister Henry asks her, would you please go to the Mother Directress and have her go to my confessor and have him say a Mass for me and some prayers. And she is like, yeah, I'm going to go. And then the next day she doesn't go. And then, because she thinks, I'm not sure if this is a dream or if this is real, so I'm just not going to go. And so then she had the same thing happen the next night. And then she decides, I'm not going to go unless I'm visited again by Sister Henry, which she is. And Sister Henry comes to her and is like, basically, what are you doing? I need your help. And so Sister Faustina immediately goes to the Mother Directress, tells her what's going on. And she's like, Mother Directress says, I will take care of everything. And then she felt great peace. So what caught me on this is There are so many times when people have asked me to pray for them. You see it all the time on social media. You'll scroll through and somebody's got a picture up of somebody who's in the hospital, or somebody who's saying, I need prayers for so and so. As you can hear, probably right now there's an ambulance going by. Prayers for that person. But you look at it and you feel this call to pray, and you don't really do it, or you're like, oh, I'll get to it later, and then it doesn't happen. Or we might think of it a little later on in the day, and we're like, yeah, I'll get to that later on when I'm praying my rosary, or when I do my nightly prayers, or I'll remember that person. And when I read this, I was like, gosh, it is so important for us to pray for people who have asked for our prayers. And I think so often what we think is that we need to have this long, lengthy prayer time where we spend a great amount of time maybe in front of the Blessed Sacrament, or we light candles and we've got our rosary and we're completely uninterrupted, for us to be able to pray for somebody. And we really don't have to do that. I mean, we're all busy. We all get a lot of prayer requests usually throughout the day or the week. And so I think something that's really, somebody once posted this on social media. They said, when somebody asks me to pray for them and I don't have a lot of time, I will quickly just say, Jesus, I trust in you. I am praying for whoever, and please bless them in this situation. And then they move on. And she said, if later on I remember that person in my deeper prayer time, I will again pray for them. I thought that was such a good idea, because we are bombarded a lot, especially on social media, with prayer requests, and it gets to be a bit much. But if we can just say one short thing, and even a Jesus, Mary, and Joseph prayer, so quick, draw them to mind, offer that prayer for them. They need our help. That can be what it is. And we don't have to think that we need these long, drawn out, lengthy prayers. Those are good too, obviously, and if you can remember them. But I just thought that was something to encourage us when somebody asks for our prayers. Sometimes it can be short and sweet. Okay, so the deeper thing here, though, that I really want to get into is what's going on in her soul right now. And she is experiencing kind of a darkness of the soul. And for those of us that have read anything about Mother Teresa from Calcutta, Saint Mother Teresa, we know that, she was this little happy nun, always had a smile on her face, so sweet. She was so, she wasn't like supermodel beautiful, but she was just beautiful. Gosh, she drew your eyes. And even pictures of her today just really, you just are drawn to the holiness and the joy that is exuding from her. But we know that she had darknesses of the soul, dark times of the soul, where she did not feel God's presence at all. And yet she continued to go forth with her mission, serving the needy, the least among us. And in that, she saw each person that she was helping, she saw Christ. And she did it even though she was experiencing just nothing really in her soul that would tell her that she was loved by God, or that she could feel his presence, and he was really moving in her soul. And that's what we read here going on with Sister Faustina, which is so interesting that these saints experience these things, because I think we think that saints would always just totally have it together, like everything is perfect, everything is wonderful, and we know that's not true. We know that the saints suffer greatly. I don't think there has been a saint that hasn't suffered greatly in some way. At least I can't think of one. But what I want to point out, and what I want to take from this, is I think sometimes we think when we answer the call, whatever God has called us to do, either that our vocation or maybe our life's mission, or whatever that is, that there is this, we kind of romanticize it, like, oh man, we're just going to have this deep, deep connection with Jesus, and our prayer life is going to just be stellar, and we're just always going to feel great, and everything's going to fall in place, and we're going to be up on top of the mountain singing "The Hills Are Alive" with the sound of music. And oftentimes that's not what happens. Oftentimes it's the opposite. There's this darkness that hits, and you're, like she says, she's struggling to pray, she's struggling to meditate, she can't get her focus. And we would think that once she's finally got into the convent, that's where she wants to be, Jesus wants her to be there, that everything would just really start rolling for her. And it's not. And I think this comes because God is wanting us to totally trust that even when we don't feel him, even when we can't sense his presence in our soul, in our life, or something like that, that he is there. He is testing our trust in him. Kind of like Job in the Bible, who just lost everything, and yet he remained faithful to God. Even when the people were like around him saying, even his wife, Job's wife, was like, you just got to give up this religious stuff. Satan's there just ruining his life. And Job is in this very, very dark place, and yet he has total trust in the Lord that gets him through. And he's blessed because of it. And I think that's what we see going on here with Sister Faustina. And, I think it's sometimes right after the call, we think it might get easy because, we found the way, that it gets the hardest. Then it starts to get really hard. It was hard maybe to find what God's calling for our life is, to try to figure that out. And then once we think we've figured it out and we're headed down that path, then it gets really, really hard. I'm not comparing my life to Sister Faustina in any way. She's obviously a saint. But when I first realized that I was supposed to start writing, because I was being challenged by a friend of mine who had become an atheist. And I was a pretty recent convert, and she was challenging me, and I didn't have answers, and so I just threw myself into research and studying and reading to really more fully understand our Catholic faith and Christianity and Christ. And when I realized it was time for me to start writing, and that was going to be my way of evangelizing, I was like, yes, this is it. I've always liked to write. I've always liked to tell stories. I'm a pretty open book. And I start, and I got like one person, who's probably my husband, to read my blog. And oh gosh, that was so humiliating. And I kept at it. I was like, okay, I'm brand new. I'm not a big name or anything. And so I just kept plugging away. And it was so disheartening to see, the next week, maybe 3 people who were all related to me would read it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, all right, maybe I've made a mistake here. And I was so defeated. I can't tell you how many times I told my husband I was done, and that I walked away, and I was like, I can't do this. This is obviously not right. This isn't working out, because I thought it would be easy. I thought if I lived out my calling when I, evangelizing through writing, that it would just be blessed immediately, and it would be as easy as all get out, and I would have followers. And it just didn't happen. And it took almost 6 years of writing to start to see any progress. And once I changed my name from Passionate Purpose to Catholic Pilgrim, that's when things started really taking off. But it took 6 years. And in that 6 years, I probably wanted to quit like 9 million times. But something kept drawing me back every time. And I just trusted that God would bless this if I just kept at it. And so I think we're going to see some more dark times with Sister Faustina. But the good news is that God is there. Even when you can't feel him, even on days when your prayers are messy and you can't, you're trying to get through a rosary and your mind is distracted and you just don't feel God, he is there. And that is the good news. Remember, When Christ was on the cross, when Christ was in the garden, he felt abandoned. He felt completely alone, and that very human part of him felt abandoned. So he understands what that feels like. So you are not alone. Never forget it. So until next time, Catholic pilgrims, live the faith boldly and travel well.